My parents told me the knocking I heard my whole life was just the old house settling. They lied. When I finally broke into their forbidden bedroom, I learned the sound was my sister, and she was asking me to kill her. You know, there are rules in every family. It's the baseline of civilization, right? Don't track mud in the house. Finish your vegetables. Don't speak to your mother that way. Normal, everyday stuff. The guardrails that keep a family from driving off a cliff. In the house I grew up in, we had all those. But we had another one. A big one. The one rule that was never spoken aloud, because it didn't need to be. It was etched into the silence of the hallways, into the very foundation of our home. And it was absolute: you do not, under any circumstances, go into your parents' bedroom without them. And I don't mean you knock first. I mean you don't go. Ever. The door was always locked. I'm 28 years old, a mechanic with grease permanently under my fingernails, and I can count on one hand the number of times I saw the inside of that room before, well, before the end. That room wasn't part of the house. It was a sovereign nation, and my parents were its grim, silent border patrol. And I always knew why I wanted in. It was the knocking. It started when I was a kid. Maybe 7 or 8. It was faint, easy to miss if you weren't listening for it. A soft, methodical sound. Thump thump thump, a pause, thump thump thump. It came from deep inside their room, from the far wall, the one that backed onto the musty old linen closet in the upstairs hall. At first, I told myself it was the pipes. Houses make noises, especially old 2-story colonials like ours. But the sound was too deliberate. Pipes groan and hiss. This was a rhythm. It had intent. A couple of times, through some fluke, the door was left unlocked. A parent in a hurry, a simple mistake. A child's curiosity is a force of nature, isn't it? I'd slip in. The air was always thick, still. It smelled of my mother's lavender sachets and my father's Old Spice. It was just a bedroom, a heavy oak bed frame, a dresser, a tall, imposing wardrobe against that far wall. It stood there like a tombstone. And the closer I got to that wardrobe, the clearer the sound became. Thump thump thump. Not loud. But it was there. Coming from behind the wardrobe. Coming from inside the wall. I never got away with it. My mother had a sixth sense. I'd be in there for 30 seconds, just breathing the still air, and I'd hear her footsteps thundering down the hall. The look on her face wasn't anger. Anger you can deal with. This was stark, primal terror. The look of an animal trying to get back to its wounded offspring. The punishments were biblical. Grounded for a month. No bike, no friends, nothing. But the worst part was my father. He wouldn't yell. He'd sit me down in his study, the air smelling of leather and disappointment. He'd just look at me, his eyes like chips of ice. Some things, Michael, he'd say, his voice dangerously low, are private. They are burdens for your mother and me to carry. Not you. Your only job is to respect that. To respect our privacy. Do you understand what a burden is? I'd nod, my throat tight. It's a heavy weight, he'd continue, staring at something far away. And you don't add to it. You don't ever add to the weight. As a teenager, I got bold. Cocky. I thought I could break them with logic. I asked them at dinner one night. Seriously, what's the big deal about your room? And what's that knocking sound I hear sometimes? The silence that fell was heavier than lead. My mother froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Her face went pale. My father, he very slowly, very deliberately, placed his knife and fork down on his plate, perfectly parallel. He stared at me, and the friendly dad I knew was gone. In his place was a stranger, a warden. "There is no knocking sound," he said, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "You are mishearing the house settling. And we are done with this topic. If you ever bring it up again, Michael, if you ever try to enter our room again, I swear to you, the consequences will be something you will carry for the rest of your life. It will become your burden. And trust me, son, you are not strong enough to carry it." I believed him. I dropped it. For years. But I watched. I listened. My mother, she was a ghost in her own home. She'd do her chores, cook the meals, and then she'd just disappear. She'd slip into that bedroom and lock the door. For hours. Sometimes, I'd press my ear against the wood. I never heard a TV, or music. Just a deep, profound quiet. And sometimes, just barely, I could hear her whispering. Or humming. A simple, tuneless little melody, the kind you'd hum to a sleeping baby. Life went on. I graduated. Got a job at a local garage. Saved my money. And at 28, I finally had enough for a down payment on a small house across town. Freedom. But one thought consumed me: it's now or never. This secret wasn't just a rule anymore. It was a presence. A silent, watchful entity that had shaped my entire life. I couldn't leave it behind. I had to face it. The night before I moved, I helped my dad load the last of my boxes into his pickup truck. He clapped me on the shoulder, a rare moment of physical affection. "You did good, Mike. We're proud of you." My voice trembled, but I had to ask. "One last time, Dad. Before I go. Please. Just tell me. What have you been hiding all these years?" The warmth vanished. The warden was back. His hand dropped from my shoulder. His face became a granite mask. "Your new life starts tomorrow," he said, his voice flat and final. "What is in this house is part of your old one. You will leave it behind. You will not add to the weight. Am I clear?" "Crystal," I said. That was his final word. And it was all the permission I needed. The next morning, I watched their cars pull out of the driveway for work. The house was empty. The silence was enormous. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew the cookie jar was a decoy. My father was a man of habit and security. His workshop in the garage, that was his sanctuary. I went in. It smelled of sawdust and oil. On his workbench was a heavy, steel toolbox. Locked, of course. But I'm a mechanic. I know my way around locks. A pair of tension wrenches and a pick. 3 minutes later, I heard the click. Inside, beneath a set of antique wrenches, was a small, velvet pouch. And inside the pouch was a single, ornate brass key. It felt cold in my hand. Heavy with significance. Walking back into the house, up the stairs, my footsteps felt unnaturally loud. I stood before their door. The key slid into the lock like it was coming home. A turn, a click, and the door swung open. The room was just as I remembered. Dim, the heavy curtains drawn, the air stale with the ghost of lavender and aftershave. The massive wardrobe loomed against the far wall. And I could hear it. Clearer than ever before. Thump thump thump. A weak, tired, but insistent rhythm. A sound of flesh, however frail, against wood. I didn't hesitate. Adrenaline was afire in my veins. I put my shoulder into the wardrobe and pushed. It was heavy, solid oak, but I've spent 10 years wrestling with engine blocks. It groaned, scraping across the hardwood floor, inch by painful inch. And there it was. It wasn't just a wall. It was a door. A small door, painted the same beige as the walls, with the baseboard running right across its bottom to camouflage it. It was designed to be invisible. There was no keyhole. Just a small, simple brass knob. My hand was shaking as I reached for it. It was ice cold. I turned it. It wasn't locked. The door swung open with a low, mournful creak, revealing a sliver of utter blackness. A smell wafted out. Not of dust and age. It was a faintly sweet, cloying smell. Like old flowers and something else, something chemical. I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pushed the door all the way open. It was a closet. A hidden room, no bigger than a pantry. The walls were bare plaster. But it wasn't empty. It was a shrine. A testament to a grief so profound it had become monstrous. In the center was a small wooden table, draped with a yellowed lace cloth. On it were dozens of candles, some new, some melted into waxy puddles. There was a small, tarnished silver rattle. A worn, plush teddy bear with one button eye missing. A stack of children's books, their covers soft and frayed from countless readings. Good night, Moon. The Cat in the Hat. My mother's humming suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. And on a small, silk pillow in the very center of this sad, desperate altar, was the source of the knocking. It was the baby from the photo albums I'd seen as a kid, the ones labeled Our Little Angel that my mom kept hidden in the attic. But it wasn't a baby anymore. It was a thing. Preserved. Its body was small and shrunken, mummified. The skin was a pale, translucent parchment stretched taut over a tiny, bird-like skeleton. Its eyes were closed, sunken into the skull. Its mouth was a tiny, black O. It was a horrific, perfectly preserved relic. And then I saw it. The right hand, the tiny, skeletal fingers, was propped up against the thin plaster wall behind the altar. Thump thump thump. It wasn't the whole hand moving. It was impossible. The body was inert, dead. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch, a vibration that tapped the wall. A muscle spasm in a corpse, happening for 30 years. I felt a dizzying, overwhelming urge to touch it. A pull. Not of curiosity, but of pity. I reached out a trembling hand, and I gently laid my fingertips on its cold, dry forehead. And the world shattered. It wasn't a vision. It was a download. Decades of silent, screaming consciousness slammed into my mind. I see a sterile, white hospital room. My mother's raw, animalistic sobs. My father, his face a mask of stone, holding her up. A doctor, his face grim. The fever, it was too aggressive. I'm so sorry. Your daughter is gone. Her name was Sarah. I see my father in his study, not the man I knew, but a younger man, his eyes wild with a grief that had curdled into madness. An old, leather-bound book is open on his desk, its pages filled with archaic diagrams and writing in a language that hurts to look at. There's a way, he's whispering, his voice hoarse. It's a loophole. We don't have to let her go. We just have to anchor her soul. Give her a vessel to inhabit. She won't be gone. She'll just be quiet. I see them in this room. The chalk circle on the floor. The candles. The chanting. The words from the book feel wrong in my father's mouth, heavy and unnatural. They place Sarah's tiny, still body on the altar. They beg. They plead. They offer their grief as a sacrifice. And as the final word is spoken, a coldness fills the room so profound it feels like the death of a star. The tiny body on the altar twitches. Just once. And then I felt her. Her consciousness. A tiny spark of awareness, snatched back from the peace of oblivion and slammed back into a prison of decaying, preserved flesh. I felt her confusion turn to terror as she realized she couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Couldn't open her eyes. She was a ghost chained to her own corpse. For years, she was just a baby's mind, adrift in a silent, dark eternity. But she grew. Her mind aged, learned, expanded, fed by the whispers and humming of the mother she could hear but never see. She learned about the world from the stories of Horton and the Grinch. She became a thinking, feeling person trapped in a state of living death. The knocking was the only thing she could do. A desperate, single-minded effort, focusing all her will into that one, tiny, repeating twitch. A message in a bottle, thrown into an ocean of silence. And as the tidal wave of her memories receded, her voice echoed in my mind. Not a whisper from the wall. A clear, soul-shattering scream inside my own head. He made a mistake. The voice was pure, articulate, and filled with an ancient weariness. He didn't just anchor me. The ritual, it was flawed. He read the words wrong. He didn't just open a door for me to stay, he ripped a hole. I'm not just a prisoner. I'm the key that holds the lock open. A new wave of feeling washed over me, not hers, but something other. A feeling of being watched by things in the dark spaces between worlds. They're drawn to me, her voice screamed in my mind. They're drawn to the light of a trapped soul. They can hear my thoughts. They've been scratching at the edges for years. Dad's ritual. Mom's love, their constant grief, it feeds the anchor. It strengthens the lock. But it also makes me brighter. Louder. They're getting closer. The knocking wasn't just let me out. It was hurry. Then came the final plea, the one that broke me. Please. He can't fix it. Only you can. You have to turn the key. You have to destroy the prison. Before they get me. Please. Kill me. I ripped my hand away, stumbling back, gasping for air. A sob tore from my throat. My parents weren't just grieving. They were fools who had stumbled into a cosmic horror they couldn't comprehend. They hadn't just imprisoned their daughter, they had turned her into bait for things that should not be. My choice was gone. This wasn't about respecting their grief anymore. This was about closing a door before a whole hell of a lot worse came through. I ran to their bed, grabbed a thick, wool blanket. I returned to the shrine. I'm sorry, Sarah, I whispered, my voice thick. I'm so sorry. I reverently, carefully, wrapped her tiny, mummified body in the blanket. It was as light as a bundle of dry sticks. As I lifted her, the knocking stopped. For the first time in 30 years, the wall was silent. A deep, profound peace settled in the room, but it was edged with a terrifying urgency. I placed her in my duffel bag. I didn't close the hidden door. I didn't move the wardrobe. I wanted them to see. I wanted them to know what their grief had wrought. I left the key on the kitchen table, walked out the front door, and did not look back. The drive was a blur of purpose. I felt her gratitude, a wave of pure, beautiful relief. But beneath it, I could feel the presence of the things she spoke of, a cold, hungry static at the edge of my perception, angry that their prize was being taken away. I drove for hours, heading for the coast. I found what I was looking for near an old, forgotten fishing town, a desolate, rocky beach, battered by the Atlantic. Under a pale, gray sky, with the waves crashing against the shore, I built a small pyre from driftwood. I unwrapped my sister one last time. I told her I was sorry I didn't know. I whispered an apology for our parents, for my own ignorance, for the life she never had. I laid her on the pyre, doused it in gasoline from the can in my trunk, and with the flick of a Zippo, I set her free. The flames roared to life, consuming the driftwood and the tiny, earthly prison that had held her for so long. And as the fire reached its peak, I felt it. Not in my mind, but in the world around me. A sudden, violent slam. A pressure change in the air, like a door being kicked shut against a hurricane. The cold, hungry static at the edge of my senses vanished. The world felt Normal again. Quiet. I watched until the fire burned down to glowing embers, until the sea breeze scattered her ashes into the vast, unforgiving ocean. And I wept. I wept for the sister I never knew, for the parents I could never go back to, and for the terrible, necessary thing I had just done. They'll come home from work tonight. They'll see the open door. The empty shrine. They will know I have taken her. They will hate me. They will see me not as a savior, but as a thief who stole the last, twisted remnant of their daughter. I didn't just free my sister. I destroyed my parents. I performed an act of mercy that was also an act of profound cruelty. I closed a door to save her from monsters, but in doing so, I became the monster in my own family's story. And that is a burden I'm just beginning to understand. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to carry it.